What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to week 4 of the Axial Honcho Budget Build. We've got 2 items on the agenda for this week. The first one is going to be the front bumper. Now, took this rig out and wheeled it again last week, and we put together a running video. During that run, this bumper, again, was just something that you really notice being out there. You can't miss this bumper. And especially since I decided to go with a little bit smaller tire, it just makes it even a little bit more challenging not to constantly be hitting that front bumper on your approach to an obstacle. So we've got 2 options for front bumpers from ScalerFab here this week. I'm going to install them both on this truck. We're going to see which one we like best, and I'm going to put it to a vote. You guys are going to get to vote which one we're going to actually end up going with on this build. And then the one that we don't choose, we're going to give away. And ScalerFab also sent some other accessories along with the front bumper options because ScalerFab has put together a Honcho package. So if you'd like to buy several components at once, you can save some decent money. The second thing that we're going to do is going to be a freebie style mod. I want to put in some inner fenders on this car, and I don't want to spend a bunch of money because, again, we're just trying to add value to this thing, but we're trying to do a little bit at a time every week, and we can get away with doing some really inexpensive inner front fenders with just some stuff that you might have laying around. First off, let's take a look at the 2 bumper options that ScalerFab sent, get them installed on the cars, and show you guys what they look like. So ScalerFab sent these 2 bumper options for me to look at. One is a fabricated style and one is more of a pre-runner style. But it's important to note that with the Honcho, the bottom edge of the front of the body sits noticeably higher above the frame rails, and there's nothing in that area to help fill that gap. Now, ScalerFab's front bumpers are raised up specifically for that Honcho bumper to try and cover up that body line and make it all look a little bit more filled in. Now, the fabricated option that they sent is a narrower version overall, giving you a lot better approach angle to those front tires. The second option is more of a pre-runner full width bumper, but it's not nearly as intrusive as that factory Honcho bumper is. And also, both of these are going to sit much closer to the front of the body than that stock bumper. So even if we go with the full width pre-runner style version, we're still going to have a much better approach and much better clearance than we do with the factory plastic bumper. Now, the install of these bumpers is extremely simple, but let's run through it just to show you how it's done. The first thing we're going to do is actually remove the zip ties that bundle all the wires, because we're going to disconnect those front LEDs since they're attached to that front bumper. Once that LED string is loosened up, remove the wires from the cable routing system that go all the way to the front servo. Remove the 2 set pins that attach the front bumper to the chassis. The front bumper will then just pull out of the front bumper support. Then we're going to remove the 2 M3 screws from each side of the chassis near the front bumper support. Now, these factory screws are in M3x6. Since the ScalerFab bumpers go towards the outside of the chassis, I'm going to replace these screws with something a couple millimeters longer at least when I install them back into the chassis with the new ScalerFab bumper. When installing the front bumper, you can leave this plastic chassis brace in place if you'd like. However, if you remove it, you will be able to slide this bumper back about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch further onto the chassis. So if you're already trying to plan on the maximum approach angle you could get, I would suggest removing that brace completely. Then when installing the bumper, place it over the chassis and start the 2 rearmost screws into those cross braces first. Once you've got the rear screws in place, when you install the front screws, you will need an M3 lock nut behind that screw on the inside of the chassis. Now, with the body moved down, you can decide exactly what position you would like to put the bumper. Whether you need it pulled out because you plan on putting a winch or something on top, or you want to move it all the way in so that you get the maximum amount of approach angle out of your front bumper. I prefer maximum approach angle, so I took that cross brace out and I've slid this all the way in as far as it will go. Then we're going to go through and tighten up all of those screws. So now we're going to switch from that Pro Comp to the more pre-runner style. Installation is going to be exactly the same though, so I'm just going to throw this one on and show you the difference. So I'm going to leave the pre-runner bumper on here for now, but like I said, I'm going to leave it to a vote. And I'm not saying which one that I actually like better, but you guys can use the little info card above and choose which one you like. Whichever one gets the most votes between the posts, that's the one that we'll stay with. Now, whatever bumper doesn't get chosen, that one we're going to give away compliments of Troy and Casey at ScalerFab. Also, Troy and Casey at ScalerFab are doing some giveaways of their own, including an SCX10-2, so you can check in the description below for some of the details on how you could win that if you're interested. As I mentioned, ScalerFab sent over a number of accessories when they sent me these bumpers. They have a Honcho Class 2 package right now that will save you some money if you're interested. What that includes is the narrow front bumper with the trail bar, their standard rear bumper, as well as their slider combo with the skid plates. You can get all of that as well as a land anchor for 99 bucks. It does save you like 25% total. I'll put all the links below if you're interested in saving some money and buying a number of parts all at once. So now we've got our front bumper installed, and let's get on to our cheap mod of the week. Now, we've done a really good job of starting to kind of close this thing up and make it look a little bit more scale. I think by raising this front bumper and getting it closer to the bottom of the grille of the Honcho body, as well as our interior modification, we're starting to really close up where you can see into this body. And the next step is to make some inner fender wells for this thing. Now, inner fender wells can be expensive depending on the style that you go with. But what I'm gonna do this week is we're gonna make our own using an old Ziploc container. Now, this is just an old Ziploc container that I had sitting around the shop that I used to organize some parts into. And I think it's going to be a pretty decent size to become a donor for our front inner fender wells. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start getting this thing cut into a basic shape so I can start getting it into place and test fitting. So now I've got one very large portion of this resealable container. I'm just gonna kind of keep mocking it into position, noticing where I'm starting to have some clearance issues, and just chipping away at this thing slowly. Not taking any huge steps at a time to try and just work my way towards this thing fitting exactly as I want it to. I am going to make note of where the front edge of the wheel well is, as well as where the sliders sit. I want to kind of try and get them so that this sits behind that wheel well, but not too far into this slider, just to make sure that I get full coverage. I don't think I'm going to need all of this front section. The body, I think, kind of covers that enough, so I'll probably end up cutting most of the front of this away. So I've got that first side of the fender well completely trimmed up, fitting in there how we want, trimmed out around the body post, the whole deal. What I'm gonna do next is I'm actually going to remove this side and I'm going to transfer it onto the other side. We'll just do that by backing up the two, matching them up, tracing around them. That way we can quickly cut the second version much faster than it took us to do the trial and error method that we did on this one. So now we've got both of the wheel wells done. After doing the first one, the second one was much easier. Again, we transferred over the marks, cut it out, test fit it in a spot. The two sides are a little bit different just because you've got a receiver box on one side and you have a servo, and the shock tower is different with the panhard mount. But some minor trimming around those few differences and it pretty much all falls into place. In general, this whole project's just kind of a cut and go, trial and error type deal, but it's not that difficult. Now, as far as attaching these to the chassis, all I did was I took those M3x6 button head screws that I took out of that front bumper brace, and I simply screwed them in from the backside into the shock mounting point on the shock towers. So now that that part of it's done, I'm gonna take these back off of the chassis and I'm gonna clean them extremely well with hot water, Dawn dish soap, and then I'm just gonna give them like a quick scuff with some Scotch-Brite or something like that, just to make sure that my Lexan paint adheres to this plastic well. I'm gonna do a coat of paint on the inside and outside of these. I'd like to do it on the outside or the inner fender well part of it, just to give it a more flat black look. But if it rubs off or anything like that, I wanna have it on the outside here as well, just to make sure that you're not ever seeing through them again. So let's get them back off the chassis, shoot a quick coat of paint, put them back on here, and see how this whole project looks when it's finished up. So we're nearing completion of what we wanted to get done today, but the last thing that I want to do is relocate those lights that were on that front bumper. To do that, you will need to remove the 4 screws from the front of that bumper to remove the aluminum plate. Once that aluminum plate is removed, you'll have access to the 2 screws that held on those factory lights. With the lights removed, I'm going to trim off the little peg on the bottom of the light so that it sits flush with that mounting surface. The existing holes that I'm gonna use are smaller than an M3 screw. They're made for mounting a winch or something like that. I'm going to take an 1/8 inch drill bit in my drill and drill those screws out to make sure that I can accept an M3 screw in that hole without any issues. And that wraps up week number 4. We threw a bumper on there. We're gonna vote on which one actually stays, and we did a freebie set of inner fender wells. Overall, we're just making progress towards making this thing scale and different than the rest of the honchos that you see out on the trail. Matt is doing a killer job on changing the look of his. He's killing me in that department. I've really got to figure out how I'm going to step up the look of this shell, but it hasn't come to me yet. So for now, we're gonna keep rocking that factory graphics and paint scheme. As for last week's giveaway for the 3 sets of the Flip Your Lid kits, if you see your name listed in the description below, shoot me a message and I'll get your information over to Brett so he can get those shipped out to you. And to choose who will win the giveaway for the ScalerFab Bumper sets, I will choose one of the commenters below and I'll give you the name of that person next week. Make sure to go check out Matt's week 4 as well. And if you haven't seen the rest of the episodes, I've got a playlist linked below with both Matt and I's videos in order. This whole series with Matt and I'm more excited today than I was when I very first started this series. I'm super excited to continue. I can't wait to see where they go. And as we get further and further down the line, how Matt and I continue to keep differing more and more from each other. So like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, guys. Looking forward to week 5, and we'll see you on the next one.